everybody really harps on construction for not innovating and not changing. They said there's got to be opportunity. Go find it. And so that's what started ZQuip. It was just this curiosity of where can we take some of the smartest engineers on the planet who work at Moog and apply them to the construction space in a way that can accelerate anything around the electrification, autonomy, or connected environment that's evolving in construction.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to What's Next? Stories of Industry Reinvention by TechNexus Venture Collaborative. I'm Jim Dahlke, our Director of Communications.
And I'm Andrew Lucis, Vice President of Strategy and Venturing here at TechNexus.
And if this interview series is all about industry reinvention, we've got a great interview with a company that's doing just that in ZQuip, which is really changing the way construction sites power their large equipment.
That's right. ZQuip is a revolutionary startup born out of Moog, an engineering firm out of Buffalo that typically focuses on precision machinery and actuators. They're revolutionizing construction sites by swapping diesel engines with high power, efficient electric propulsion, reducing carbon while not sacrificing any power or efficiency.
And the analogy that I really love is that the same way at your workbench at home, in your garage, as you swap a battery between your power drill and all your other hand equipment on the workbench, ZQuip is doing that same thing for the construction site.
That's exactly right. They've come up with a system where power, whether it's batteries, diesel generators, hydrogen fuel cells, whatever the job needs, can be swapped between machinery, across different machines, or even leveraged independently as a generator, all with the goal of reducing emissions on the job site.
And this is a company that's got big implications for how these construction sites power their equipment. And we are going to jump right into the interview right now with ZQuip's Chris LaFleur and TechNexus CEO and co-founder Terry Howerton. Let's dive in.
Well, welcome, everybody. I am Terry Howerton, the CEO of TechNexus, sitting in the chair interviewing another one of our portfolio companies today. Really excited to have this conversation with Chris LaFleur, who is about to become the CEO of a spin-out that we're partnered with a company called Moog. Moog is a large public company that has developed internally some pretty exciting technology called ZQuip. And Chris has been an integral part of developing that, and now as a part of helping us spin that out, and will actually lead that startup. So Chris, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, really excited. Our relationship over the last year has been developing and growing to a point where I frankly can't wait for this to be a standalone venture and for you to take the helm.
You and me both.
Well, let's get into it. I want to make sure that we talk a lot about what ZQuip is. But before we do so, just as a reminder of how this conversation even comes about, I said we've got a partnership with Moog and we work with you as a portfolio company. TechNexus has almost 200 portfolio companies, all of which are curated today around our corporate partnerships with companies like Moog. This is a bit unique, spinning out of a public company as opposed to investing in an entrepreneur that maybe created something from the ground up. But the very principle of what we're trying to do here is figure out how big companies and early companies can work together to be more commercial, be more successful. And this is at the core of what we're doing with ZQuip.
It is.
So tell me a little bit about the history of ZQuip and Moog. How did this even get started internally at Moog?
Right. So, Moog is quite a historic engineering company. They've been around for 70 years, and there are some groundbreaking technologies that they've made over the decades that impact everyday life, airplanes, satellites, and it's a very engineering-driven environment. They make the most difficult things. They solve the most difficult problems. And, they've had a lot of different growth and innovation departments internally that have done very cool things, but in closely tied industries or applications to what they've traditionally worked on. And about 5 or 6 years ago now, they realized that there was an opportunity in the construction space in electrification and autonomy that was really something new. And it could be
New industry, new industry for Moog to focus
Yep.
on. Yeah. Yeah.
It could be an area of organic growth and into a new vertical that they could see as a way to have a more diverse business. And so I got involved in Moog construction from the beginning. I have more of an entrepreneurial background, and what they wanted to do was create an environment where they could put their engineers in a position to solve what people say is not a solvable problem, and put entrepreneurs and business people into a place where they can try to build new business models and way of doing things, and hopefully the two of those would lead to a success. And so with the start of Moog construction was driven by some early construction OEMs making the transition to electrification. And that's both electrification in batteries and motors, but also in actuation.
So large incumbent manufacturers looking to try to figure out how to electrify or add autonomy to their construction equipment.
Correct.
Came to Moog and said, "We need your engineering expertise."
And it was a match made in heaven, really. From day one, the gaps in expertise on the OEM side perfectly lined up with what Moog can do, and we made a lot of progress very quickly. The most prominent one is the Bobcat T7X. It's an all-electric compact track loader. It's an amazing machine. It's the supercar of the machinery, and from that though, so we focused partially on helping OEMs with their electrification journey, working with them to integrate parts, the systems engineering, the electrification, the high voltage side. We also had an arm that focused on autonomy, and we did a lot of really interesting things in solar, in farming. And then my group that ZQuip came out of, they just called it Reimagined Machinery. And it was really the skunk works of this. It was, everybody really harps on construction for not innovating and not changing. They said there's got to be opportunity. Go find it. And so that's what started ZQuip. It was just this curiosity of where can we take some of the smartest engineers on the planet who work at Moog and apply them to the construction space in a way that can accelerate anything around the electrification, autonomy, or connected environment that's evolving in construction.
So Moog invested a whole lot of money and a lot of its engineer and brain power time into what is now ZQuip.
Correct.
And what they now recognize for the next part of its journey is going to have its most success as a standalone entity. Moog's not going anywhere. They're still going to be a big shareholder.
Oh yeah.
They're just welcoming other shareholders to the table alongside of them. Probably a lot of other strategics, people from that OEM, the equipment manufacturing industry, others from the construction industry, as well as financial investors, to really set this company up as an independent success story on its own. Tell us a little bit about ZQuip specifically. What is the purpose of the business? What's the technology that makes us special?
So from that first day of what are the problems that need to be solved in construction that nobody thinks can happen, it started with you want to minimize the disruption to operations so that a job site, a fleet of machines, they can transition to clean energy without totally screwing up your operations and your productivity.
Right. The construction site can't stand a 4-hour recharge or a day-long recharge or something like that just for the sake of zero emissions.
Right. It's such a high stakes, low margin, nonstop. Anybody who's been to a construction site knows that precise planning is not possible because things are always moving and always changing. And so we knew that we had to make a technology that could be as versatile as possible, not just in its application, but in its resiliency, in its ability to transform and evolve with the user to be something that allows them to grow in this electrification space. So the core of ZQuip is in the flexibility of the type and amount of energy that you need to power your applications on site.
So gross oversimplification, but for us laymen, the guys that have a Makita drill and a Milwaukee drill at home,
Mhm.
and a saw, and we're used to swapping the battery pack maybe off the saw
Right.
and putting it on the drill. You've done that now for diggers and bulldozers and large
Right.
heavy equipment. And it's not just batteries, right? It's swapping, you've said it a couple of times, but it's swapping energy sources, whether that
Correct.
energy source is electric, diesel, or hybrid between
Correct.
electric and diesel. You've built a solution that allows you to quick swap energy off of these heavy equipment in the same way that I might do at home with my saw and my drill.
Right. Exactly. That's the perfect comparison. And the progression of that was first make the large machine function like a hand tool so that I can swap a battery out if I need to, and I can choose different size batteries if I need to. And then from there, it was no job site uses only one type of machine or brand of machine, rarely. So let's make those batteries interchangeable between OEMs. So your
Yeah,
Makita and your DeWalt and your Milwaukee go across all machines.
got it.
And then from there, the next phase was
That's a really important point, Chris.
it's a
I just
very
want to
well,
make sure
yeah,
that we hit on that. So what the hot swapping of energy sources that you've developed at ZQuip is is really going to work whether that equipment is a Caterpillar or a Case or any of the major construction equipment
right,
brands. You're kind of independent and work with all of those.
correct, correct.
And is it, Chris, is it are we talking about new equipment here, or are we talking about sort of retrofitting used equipment? Or are we talking about both?
It can be both. And the early days of this, it was a construction is a very much I need to see it to believe it kind of industry. And
Yeah.
so we retrofitted existing machinery. It can be used, it can be new, but the the focus of this business though is not to be a retrofit company where we're coming in and changing machines that exist. The goal of this is to get OEMs and applications who have machinery coming off the line as diesel able to create these bare tool type applications. So you have a digger, you have a dozer, you have a telehandler that comes off the line with a battery receptacle, just like you would a drill or a saw or a radio. And that allows for the upfront cost of a ZQuip machine to be exceptionally low because electric motors they cost about the same as a diesel motor and there's no batteries attached, there's no energy source attached. So it's a much more affordable business model for a customer to buy these bare tools and then find the type and size of energy module that they need to power those in the way that works.
So big picture, long term. What's the target here? Are we trying to make an argument that that the total cost of ownership for maybe an electrified digger is on par with a combustion engine, cheaper in the long run, within range? What's the target?
The target is cheaper.
Cheaper.
The target is cheaper. And this was where the creativity on the business model and the engineering had to come through is the models and all of the engineers and all of the industry advocates for zero emission have always said electric has a lower total cost of ownership. The repairs are fewer and far between. There's no fluids. The hoses don't break as much. There's not as much, the insurance liability should be lower because people can talk to each other. It's safer. The problem with that is that's over a 10 to 15 year lifespan. And it's how does that help me now type of environment.
Over a 10 to 15 year lifespan, if you're talking about a fully built, fully energized
Right.
machine, but your approach, the ZQuip approach, is saying, hey, it's not proprietary. You don't have to buy all of your energy. You don't have to fill it with battery packs
Correct.
well, we can bring the amount of energy that you need right now, and it's adaptable. It might change in the future or on the next job site. And that's the
Right.
difference.
We had to figure out a way for the customer to realize more of the value up front
Yeah.
right now. And so not only do we believe that this is a much better buying experience for people because it feels more in line with diesel, the cost of a bare ZQuip machine is on par with diesel. And then the operating cost of buying diesel fuel is on par with the financing cost of a ZQuip battery module. It feels more in line, right? And it's a much easier pill to swallow in that sense as a transition. But then the other value in this, when we converted machines and we got things going on the battery side, we realized that there were two concerns on the battery side of the business. One was supply chain, that battery companies are risky. They go out of business. And not only that, but the technology is changing so fast that it's very difficult to put all of your eggs in one basket for a battery type and supplier. And second was electric is great most of the time, but not all the time. And we've dealt with customers in Northern Europe who are working 5 hours away from a city and there's no grid and there's no electricity. And sometimes you just need to be able to run this thing for 24 hours and you can't rely on batteries. And so as part of that, we did two special things more on the software and tech side of the ZQuip modules, where we allowed the BMS, the battery management system, and the software controller of the modules and the machines to take different chemistries, suppliers of batteries, but then also different types of energy. So we have a diesel hybrid module that runs a diesel DC generator to output to the machine. And so what this does then is it turns it into not a battery machine. It turns it into an electric powered machine that can be driven by any source of energy that you integrate. It can be diesel, it can be battery, it can be hydrogen, it can be whatever new technology comes out next year that we don't even know exists right now. And so by not only removing the supply chain and supplier risk of the batteries, but also removing the risk of operations associated with batteries and range anxiety, these machines can come off the line as a bare tool and just run as a diesel machine, just like anything else. And in 5 minutes, you swap it to be a battery powered electric machine and operate it that way.
You talked about range anxiety, in an automotive sense. That's always been one of the concerns, is how far can I drive? That's not something you normally think about with your bulldozer or your digger on a construction site, but there really is range anxiety. It's, hey, I can't have downtime. I need to maximize the use of that vehicle for each shift around the clock on this project in order to be able to finish it. I go back to what you were saying earlier, the reliability argument. It's yes, it's clean energy. Yes, it's zero emission if it's fully electrified. But the argument you're making is it's also a more stable machine, a more capable machine, a more reliable machine, maybe a more serviceable machine, and maybe even a safer machine.
Right.
Which really, at the end of the day, all of those are things that every job site wants, whether they're committed to zero emission or not.
Right. And you think of, if you have a battery car and you run out of charge or something breaks on the charger or you can't use it for some reason, odds are you have another car. Odds are it's an inconvenience, maybe a big one, but it's an inconvenience. In construction, if that happens, you're losing money, you're losing jobs, and you're losing customers.
Right.
And the stakes were just too high. And the reception that we've gotten from this flexibility and energy source has been massive. And what has also been great is you realize the amount of pent up supply there is on the up and coming energy market. There are battery companies and energy technology companies who've been reaching out to us nonstop because they see ZQuip as the simplest and fastest way for them to get their technology into the hands of users. Otherwise, the engineering and the software development to get a new battery technology into an application in an industrial setting, it's a year and millions of dollars.
And one of the reasons why some of the large OEMs in every industry are so hesitant to make commitments on that, because you're making kind of almost proprietary long-term commitments. I have to pick the horse when I don't even really know what race I'm running.
Exactly.
And I think the ZQuip middleware, if you will, both at a hardware and software level, is what makes this so compelling.
Exactly. And as much as we believe in the modularity and the on-machine and off-machine usage of ZQuip, I think that there's a significant value that we can provide to the application integrators to say, leveraging ZQuip technology is not just about modularity. You may not want, right? Caterpillar might not want everybody to use the same batteries. They might want proprietary, but what we can provide to those OEMs is a significant reduction in supply chain and technology risk by saying, if anything happens, or if you want to switch to a different supplier or a different chemistry or a different technology, it's such a smooth transition. And we open up the supply to that market bigger than anybody else ever could. Yeah. And so it's a beautiful ecosystem where it's solving a major problem for an end user who wants a reason to use zero emission, but the technology wasn't quite there, while also opening up the supply and demand side for the technology to work together and make more advances. And that's part of it too. It's just there was so much waste in everybody trying to make their own proprietary system and their own proprietary way and their own proprietary management tool. It's all done this way through ZQuip, so everybody can focus on, applications focus on user experience. Technologies on the energy side focus on energy. We make it work well, and everybody's better off because of it.
And that all of that emphasis, all that waste on the sort of the proprietary approaches, it's one of the main reasons why there's been so many false starts in electrification in the construction industry, right? Like people have come in and said, as with lots of mobility, said this makes perfect sense. There ought to be an electrification solution here. But for all the reasons you've been discussing, a lot of those have stalled. Those efforts have stalled in a way that we think ZQuip's modularity is going to overcome.
Right. And you think it's, I'm going to butcher the stat, but there's an interesting thing that, 30% of all diseases are orphan diseases, where it's such a small niche disease that you can never devote the resources you need to it because you'll never get the production to make a cure. And I feel the same way about the construction market, that every machine is different. Every machine is unique. And there are so many different machines that we look at and say, God, that would be a perfect electric machine. But there's only 700 of them in the world. But if you add up all of those machines, it's a massive market. And that's how it feels when we approach ZQuip and we look at all of the applications in this market. Is the standardization on the energy side, on the form factor, allows you to reach quantities, the economies of scale, so much faster on the highest cost, highest value thing, so that you can spread electrification and zero emission to all of those one-off applications that would otherwise never have the scale to do this. Yeah. And so it's just the broadening of a market that otherwise it just doesn't exist right now because of that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point as well. Like all those purpose-built. You and I were together in Germany here a few weeks ago at Bauma, at the largest construction conference in the world, and just walking around that massive. I don't know how many football fields of was it?
Hundreds.
It was hundreds of football fields of area with every purpose-built piece of construction equipment you can possibly imagine. As you said, some that maybe they only need 100 of a year. But they're really, really, really important pieces of equipment. And the idea that ZQuip actually offers a solution that can help each of those in that industry reach this energy independence, this energy, whether it's clean energy, whether it's electrification or it's hybrid or it's diesel, or as you said, even maybe something in the future like hydrogen, very compelling. So, all right, what we're talking about here isn't just fantasy. It's not drawing board stuff. This is actual real technology that's already in the field. You've modified construction equipment from Caterpillar, construction equipment from Case, these major manufacturers. You've had them running ZQuip technology, right?
Right. Our first machine was a Cat machine, a Cat 308 excavator. And, from there, we continued to expand into larger machines, different types of machines. In Europe, we've sold wheeled excavators. We've done up to 24-ton tracked excavators. And so the technology is done, developed, tested, and working on sites out there with paying customers. So
that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
And it really was, I think, a big learning that you get from doing that is you understand how things change when you shift to this type of machine, right? There's it's not, you can't just put a diesel machine with an electric machine and expect them to work well together. So the operation side of it, the software, the management side has been a big area of focus for us to make sure that the end user experience is something that a distributor, a dealer, or anybody in between feels comfortable putting us there and letting us work with customers.
And a byproduct of this main product, this ZQuip interchangeable energy systems for the construction equipment, is also off machine energy, right?
Yeah.
Job site energy. Hey, if I have to
Right.
bring electrification to the digger on the job site, I can also use the same sort of approach and technology to provide job site emergency energy or runtime energy, right?
Yeah, and this is one of those serendipitous things that you get through innovation, where when we did our first CAT 308, we bought the nicest fast charger that we could find, and it didn't work. And so we said, we're just going to build our own. And so we built one to work with our machine. And then as our energy modules evolved and they got smaller, we realized that, well, if we're using it on the machine, we can just use it off the machine. And if we're using them on and off the machine, then this is a whole different ecosystem. And so it really evolved our vision for ZQuip to go from fleet to an entire site. And so you can have a ZQuip energy module on a machine working. But the key to this is that when that machine's not working, you can take those energy modules off and use them as gensets. You can use them to power other machines. You can use them to charge other things. You can use them to charge EVs on site.
You talked about the ecosystem. I want to kind of delve on that just a little bit. Construction world, built world is a lot of different players, right? There's the thinking even about large public works projects. There's the people that are writing the RFPs, designing the projects, architecting the projects, that are specifying things like, I want you to be zero emission or as much zero emission as you possibly can. But then there's the construction companies, there's the operators. Truth is, a lot of the times the construction companies aren't even buying the equipment
Right.
from the OEMs, the big rental companies that they're buying that equipment and then renting them from the United Rentals or the Sunbelts or the others in Europe. How does this play in a rental sort of world? Why is this a good solution for those large rental companies to be thinking about?
Yeah, the rental side is where I think the business model and what we're trying to do on the technology really shines, because rental is all about utilization. That asset has to be out in the field on rental as much as possible. And there's two parts of that. One is there's a demand for that thing consistently. And the other is that you can minimize the downtime so that if something goes wrong, it's not down for long. And this really comes back to Moog's heritage, right? Everything that we do in the aircraft industry is very high stakes, right? A plane cannot be down for long. A spaceship cannot be down for long. A fighter jet can't be down for long. And so this idea of field replaceable units and line replaceable units and modularity, when people hear modularity in electrification, they just think battery swapping. Modularity is more than that. Modularity is about quick and easy access to the different components of a machine or application for whatever purpose you have. And so in doing these ZQuip conversions in the early days, part of the modularity was, I don't have a whole field service unit to go out to Amsterdam to fix something. So we need to make sure whatever we make, it can be fixed quickly and on site. Yeah. And this is that the whole evolution of this really is becoming tailored to a rental type of model where these assets have such a broad application and such a diverse field of uses that the utilization in a rental world can be extremely high. But then on the application side, whether it's the machine itself or the module side, is so easy to repair and fix in a standardized way. I mean, that's the difficulty when you have a lot of different diesel machines with a rental company. Yeah, they're different, but you're fixing a diesel in all of these. These are each their own computers. They're supercomputers. They are not easy to repair. You have to know the exact coding language and what went into each of them. And so to allow for the standardization of code and physical technology for such a broad range of applications and energy sources is it's just a fantastic application for a high utilization, centralized repair and servicing type of model.
Chris, this is such an exciting conversation. I think there's a lot of different case studies here, right? The idea of world-class engineering inside of a company like Moog focused on solving this problem. But then, frankly, to Moog's credit, being aware that a company like this, an initiative like this, reaches a point where it can't just be an internal Skunk Works project. It can't even necessarily be an internal division. It needs the entrepreneurial zeal and frankly, the ecosystem support of other strategic investors to come to the table. I think it's just forward thinking on Moog's part. On your part, it's a credit to you and the team that is leaving Moog to go be a part of ZQuip. We're really, really excited to be on that journey. So thanks so much for being a part of the conversation.
Thank you for having me. This was great.